Hello, my name is Anup and I'm a fourth-year health science student. Today I'll be presenting a portion of the dairy cattle project I worked on over the summer, which aimed to determine the herd level prevalence of bovine leukosis in Alberta dairy herds. Imagine you're at the farm and that you're given the information that one or more of the cows at the farm may have a disease. Your task is to determine which of the cows has a disease, so you decide the first step is to look for visible signs of disease, such as bloating or the development of tumors. You see no signs of disease in the cows, so you move on to the next step, which is to test each cow for the disease of interest. But is it really worth testing each cow in the herd when we have no up-to-date information on the overall herd disease status? Well, these are all problems that we have with bovine leukosis in Alberta. The large majority of cows with leukosis show no signs of disease, and there is no up-to-date prevalence data for leukosis. Bovine leukosis is a disease that is historically common among Canadian dairy herds, and it is a disease that has been eradicated in most of Western Europe. The disease is caused by the bovine leukemia virus, which spreads mainly through blood and other bodily fluids, from infected cows to uninfected cows. Surprisingly, 95% of infected cows show no signs of disease, while the other 5% show signs of disease primarily through the presence of tumors in their lymph nodes. It's important to know that there's currently no effective treatments or vaccines for bovine leukosis, and so dairy producers must rely almost exclusively on prevention and control measures on their dairy farms. Although many of the cows infected with BLV show no signs of disease, they still face several negative effects such as reduced immune function, lower reproductive efficiency, reduced cow longevity, and reduced milk production. All these factors contribute to financial losses for farmers as they're not able to maximize on their milk production. The best way to tackle these challenges presented by leukosis is to prevent and control leukosis in the first place. But to do so, we need up-to-date prevalence estimates on leukosis. And that was the main objective of our study, to estimate the prevalence of leukosis among dairy herds of Alberta. But before we could acquire this data, we needed to figure out what dairy farms we would need to go to, where they were located, and what kind of samples we would need from them. First, we determined where the dairy farms in Alberta were, and this diagram here shows a spatial distribution of all the dairy farms across Alberta, and a single blue dot represents one dairy farm. We want to find the prevalence of leukosis at the herd level, so we would need a sample that would be representative of each cow in the herd. So we decided to collect bulk milk tank samples from each farm, as a single milk tank sample would contain the pooled milk from all the milking cows on the farm. And also, the milk sample could contain antibodies against BLV if even one cow in that dairy herd was positive for the disease. We worked with Alberta Milk to procure the bulk milk tank samples from each of the 493 farms in Alberta, and after receiving the samples, we stored the samples at -20°C. Once we were able to perform an ELISA to detect the BLV antibodies in the milk samples, we thawed the frozen samples and ran the Bovine BLV ELISA. Once we had the results from this ELISA, we grouped the results into positive and negative samples, and then calculated the overall herd level prevalence as the proportion of positive samples to the total number of tested samples. We repeated this three-step procedure for 3 separate time points. This bar chart here shows the herd level prevalence of leukosis from the 3 sample collection points in December, April, and in July. In December, the prevalence was 89.5%, April 88.7%, and July 88.5% from our preliminary results. Now that we have the current up-to-date herd level prevalence of leukosis, we can verify that bovine leukosis actually continues to stay highly prevalent on Alberta dairy farms. Once we finish testing the last of our samples from our 4th time point later this year, we can inform dairy producers on their dairy herd leukosis status and move forward with testing the within herd prevalence of leukosis by testing every single cow on a positive farm. Additionally, we can also look at the leukosis prevention and control measures employed by these farms and determine what's working and what isn't. At the end of the day, this prevalence project was actually part of a much larger project called the Cattle Health Surveillance System, which aimed to determine the prevalence of several infectious diseases in Alberta, including leukosis. I'd like to thank Dr. Shaukat, Dr. Barkema, Dr. Vandermeer, Dr. Orsel, lab technicians Kristen and Samita, and grad students Sulov and Inga for all their contributions. I'd also like to say a big thank you to all the contributing organizations. Thank you.